The sterile hum of the airport terminal often masks the simmering anxieties of travel, but for 16-year-old Jamal today held a different kind of dread. He clutched his boarding pass, a golden ticket to his summer adventure, oblivious to the storm gathering on the horizon. His father, a man whose name echoed through corporate boardrooms, was miles away, orchestrating global deals. He had no idea that a seemingly innocuous interaction at Gate B-23 would soon rip through the meticulously constructed facade of his world, grounding not just one flight, but an entire airline in a dramatic testament to the power of a father's love and the devastating ripple effect of casual prejudice. This isn't just a story about a missed flight. It's a raw, unflinching look at power privilege and the unbreakable bonds of family, all set against the unforgiving backdrop of modern air travel. The air in Terminal 3 of O'Hare International Airport was thick with the scent of lukewarm coffee, cheap perfume, and the faint metallic tang of anticipation. For Jamal Dixon, a lanky, bright-eyed 16-year-old, it was a smell that usually heralded adventure. Today, however, it felt different. He'd arrived an hour early, his worn backpack slung over one shoulder, its contents a carefully curated collection of graphic novels, a well-loved skateboard magazine, and a dog-eared copy of Dune. His destination, Portland, Oregon, where his aunt and cousins awaited a summer filled with hiking video games, and if he was lucky, a few impromptu skate sessions at Burnside Park. Jamal was accustomed to navigating airports alone. His father, William Dixon, a towering figure in the tech world and CEO of Ethel Corp., traveled incessantly, and Jamal often accompanied him or flew solo to visit relatives during school breaks. He was polite, self-sufficient, and knew the drill check in security: find your gate and wait. Simple. He'd breezed through security, his carry-on sailing through the X-ray machine, his sneakers barely scuffing the floor as he'd retrieved them. Now he stood before Gate B-23, his eyes scanning the digital display, Flight AC-107 to Portland. On time. A small sigh of relief escaped him. He found an empty seat near the window, watching the massive metal birds taxi across the tarmac, their engines a distant roar. He pulled out his phone, a sleek model his dad had given him, and sent a quick text to his father. "At gate, everything good? Love you." A moment later, a reply chimed back. "Great son, have an amazing time. Call me when you land. Love you too." As the boarding announcement began, Jamal joined the orderly queue, his boarding pass and ID clutched in his hand. The line moved slowly, a predictable dance of passengers presenting documents, receiving a quick scan, and then disappearing down the jet bridge. When it was his turn, Jamal offered a polite smile to the gate agent, a woman with severely pulled-back blonde hair and eyes that seemed to have seen one too many delayed flights. Her name tag read Brenda. Brenda took his boarding pass, her lips a thin, unsmiling line. Her gaze, however, lingered on Jamal's face for a beat too long, then flickered down to his ID. Jamal felt a flicker of unease. He was used to quick, perfunctory checks. This felt different. He saw her eyes narrow slightly as she compared his youthful face to the photo on his driver's license. "This is you?" she asked, her voice flat, devoid of the usual airline cheerfulness. "Yes, ma'am," Jamal replied, his smile unwavering, though a knot was beginning to form in his stomach. Brenda scoffed a tiny, almost imperceptible sound. "You look different in person," that Jamal frowned, genuinely confused. "It's a few years old, I guess. I'm 16. She held the ID and boarding pass for an extended moment, then looked up at him again. Her expression was unreadable, but Jamal felt a distinct chill. "Your ticket says first-class window seat 2A. Are you sure this is yours?" "Yes, it is." Jamal confirmed, his voice a little less confident now. His father always booked him first class for long flights when he was traveling alone, a small luxury, to make the journey more comfortable. Brenda pursed her lips. "And you're traveling alone?" "Yes." Jamal said, his brow furrowed. What was happening? "Hold on a moment," she snapped, not waiting for a response. She turned to her computer, her fingers clacking furiously on the keyboard. Jamal stood awkwardly aware of the impatient glances from the passengers behind him. A few people mumbled about holding up the line. He felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. He tried to catch Brenda's eye to ask what was wrong, but she kept her back to him, her shoulders rigid. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a minute, Brenda turned back, her expression now hard, almost accusatory. "Sir, I'm afraid there's an issue with your ticket. You won't be boarding this flight." Jamal stared at her, his mind struggling to process her words. What an issue? What kind of issue? "Your name doesn't match our records," she said, her voice dismissive, as if she were explaining a simple concept to a slow child. "And frankly, the booking seems suspicious. A child traveling first class alone with a ticket purchased at the last minute by an unknown entity." "Unknown entity," Jamal's voice rose slightly. "My dad booked it William Dixon. He's the CEO of Ethel Corp." He pulled out his phone, ready to show her the text messages, perhaps even call his father, though he hated to bother him during business hours. Brenda's eyes widened slightly at the mention of William Dixon, a name that carried significant weight, even in the airline industry. Ethel Corp was a major player, and William Dixon a known figure. But her initial surprise quickly morphed back into a steely resolve, almost as if she were doubling down on her initial assessment. "Regardless of who purchased it, the name on the ticket does not match the name on your identification, nor does it match our passenger manifest. Your ticket is invalid." "That's impossible," Jamal exclaimed, his heart pounding. "My name is Jamal Dixon. My dad is William Dixon. It's right there." He pointed frantically at his driver's license, then at the boarding pass. The names were identical as far as he could see. "Look, son," Brenda said, her tone dripping with false patience. "I don't have time for this. There's a flight to board. You need to step aside. If you have a problem, you can speak to customer service." She gestured vaguely towards the bustling terminal. "But the flight is boarding now," Jamal protested, desperation creeping into his voice. "I'm going to miss it. Can't you just check again?" "I have checked," Brenda stated flatly. "You are not on this flight. Next." She waved the next passenger forward, completely dismissing Jamal. Humiliation washed over him, hot and stinging. Passengers shuffled past him, some casting curious, pitying glances, others simply annoyed. He felt exposed, rejected. He stood there for a moment, stunned, the words, "You are not on this flight," echoing in his ears. His summer adventure, his reunion with his aunt, shattered in an instant. He stumbled away from the gate, his backpack suddenly feeling impossibly heavy. He found a deserted corner near a janitor's closet and sank onto a hard plastic bench. He pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed his father's number. It was a bold move, calling him in the middle of a workday, but Jamal felt a desperate need for his father's calm, reassuring voice. William would know what to do. William always knew what to do. The phone rang twice. Then William's deep, authoritative voice answered, "Dixon." The background noise sounded like a bustling office. "Dad," Jamal's voice cracked, and he was surprised to hear how shaky it was. "It's Jamal. They won't let me on the plane." There was a beat of silence on the other end. "What do you mean they won't let you on the plane, son? Is there a delay?" William's tone was sharp, a subtle shift that indicated his immediate concern. "No, Dad. The gate agent, Brenda, she said my ticket isn't valid. She said my name doesn't match their records and that my booking looks suspicious. She wouldn't even look at my ID properly. She just told me to leave." Jamal's voice was close to tears, the indignity of the situation finally overwhelming him. William Dixon was a man of immense control, accustomed to navigating high-stakes negotiations with an almost preternatural calm. But hearing the distress in his son's voice, the barely suppressed sobs ignited a cold, furious spark deep within him. "Suspicious." William's voice was dangerously quiet now, a clear warning sign to anyone who knew him. "Jamal, are you telling me a gate agent refused you boarding because she deemed your first-class ticket suspicious and questioned your identity despite you having your ID?" "Yes, Dad. She kept saying my name didn't match, but it does. And she just looked at me like I wasn't supposed to be there. Like I was lying." Jamal swallowed hard, trying to regain his composure. William's mind raced. He had booked that ticket himself through his executive assistant, Mr. Henderson, precisely to avoid any issues. The name was Jamal Dixon. The date of birth was correct. The payment was processed through Ethel Corp's corporate account. There was no conceivable reason for a discrepancy. Unless... A sickening thought began to form in William's mind, a familiar and deeply painful suspicion that he had tried to shield his son from for years. He knew the world wasn't always fair, especially to young black men traveling alone. "Stay exactly where you are, Jamal." William commanded his voice, now a low growl barely containing his fury. "Do not move from that spot. Do not speak to anyone else. I am handling this. I will call you back in 5 minutes." Jamal mumbled an, "Okay, Dad," and hung up, feeling a strange mix of relief and trepidation. He knew his father's anger was a formidable force, usually reserved for aggressive corporate takeovers or underperforming executives. To hear it directed at an airline, this was something else entirely. He just hoped his dad could fix it before the plane took off without him. He looked at the gate one last time, where the last few passengers were disappearing down the jet bridge, the heavy door already beginning to close. The plane was leaving. He was sure of it. William Dixon ended the call with his son, the receiver, almost bruising his ear. He stood in the opulent glass-walled conference room high above Manhattan, surrounded by a dozen of his most senior executives. The quarterly financial review, usually a meticulous and highly focused affair, was now utterly secondary. His face, usually a mask of calm authority, was etched with a raw, cold fury that sent shivers down the spines of even his most seasoned VPs. "Gentlemen, ladies," William began, his voice surprisingly quiet, but with an intensity that commanded absolute silence. "I apologize. This meeting is adjourned, effective immediately." A stunned murmur rippled through the room. No one had ever seen William Dixon halt a critical meeting so abruptly. "Mr. Henderson," William continued, turning to his impeccably dressed executive assistant, a man whose loyalty was legendary. "Cancel my next 3 appointments. All of them. Get me the direct line to the CEO of American Continental Airlines, Mr. Robert Sterling, immediately. And then I need you to confirm definitively the booking details for Jamal Dixon flight AC-107 to Portland, departing O'Hare, first class 2A. Leave no stone unturned. Check everything." Mr. Henderson, sensing the gravity of the situation, simply nodded, his face grim. "Consider it done, Mr. Dixon." He was already pulling out his phone, making calls, even as William strode out of the conference room, leaving a trail of bewildered executives in his wake. William retreated to his personal office, a spacious sanctuary of dark wood and understated luxury with panoramic views of the city. He didn't even bother to sit. He paced, his mind a whirlwind of anger and concern. He knew with a chilling certainty that this wasn't just a booking error. The dismissive tone, the suspicious comment, the refusal to even properly verify Jamal's ID. It all painted a picture that William knew intimately, a picture he fought against every single day of his life, not just for himself, but for his son. Within 5 minutes, Mr. Henderson's calm voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Dixon, I have Mr. Sterling on the line. He's expecting your call. And the flight details for Jamal are confirmed first class 2A, paid in full, no discrepancies whatsoever in the name or booking. All records are perfectly in order. He should have been boarded without question." William felt a fresh wave of rage wash over him, cold and hard. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Put him through." He picked up the phone, his knuckles white. "Sterling," he barked, not even bothering with pleasantries. On the other end, Robert Sterling, a man whose airline William's company spent millions with annually for corporate travel, sounded jovial, if a little surprised. "William, to what do I owe the pleasure? I trust everything is well at Ethel Corp." "Everything is far from well, Robert." William's voice was a low, dangerous rumble. "In fact, your airline has just committed a grave error that I assure you will have profound consequences." Robert's cheerfulness evaporated instantly. "What are you talking about, William? Has there been an issue with one of our corporate bookings?" "An issue?" William scoffed. "My son Jamal Dixon, a 16-year-old traveling alone on your flight AC-107 to Portland, was just refused boarding by one of your gate agents at O'Hare. He was told his ticket was suspicious. His name didn't match your records, which, by the way, Mr. Henderson just confirmed, are perfectly accurate, and he was dismissed with utter contempt. He's now stranded at your terminal, distressed and humiliated while your flight takes off without him." There was a stunned silence on the other end. Robert Sterling was a shrewd businessman, but he was also acutely aware of the power William Dixon wielded both financially and in terms of influence. The idea of William Dixon's son, especially on a first-class ticket, being treated with such disregard sent a jolt of panic through him. "William, I am absolutely appalled to hear this," Robert stammered, his voice losing its usual polish. "This is completely unacceptable. I assure you we will launch an immediate investigation. I will personally see to it that this gate agent is dealt with. We will get Jamal on the next available flight, of course, and compensate him for his trouble." "Compensate him?" William's voice rose, losing its carefully controlled edge. "Robert, do you understand what you've just done? You've allowed one of your employees to not just refuse a paying customer, but to humiliate a child, my child, based on what can only be described as a prejudiced assumption. My son is a young black man traveling alone. Are you telling me that a first-class ticket purchased by a known entity is automatically suspicious when held by a black teenager?" Robert Sterling, a man who had navigated countless PR crises, found himself completely at a loss for words. The racial implication explicitly stated by William Dixon struck him like a physical blow. He knew internally that such incidents, while rare, were not entirely unheard of within the sprawling bureaucracy of a major airline. "William, I can't believe this. I promise you we do not tolerate discrimination in any form," Robert insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "Don't you?" William's tone was scathing. "Because what just happened at gate B23 suggests otherwise. Now listen to me, Robert. My son is still at your terminal. That flight AC-107 is still on the ground, or at the very least hasn't reached cruising altitude. I want that plane held. I want Jamal boarded. And I want that gate agent Brenda removed from her post immediately, pending a full investigation. If Jamal is not on that flight, Robert, consider every single one of Ethel Corp's corporate contracts with American Continental Airlines terminated. And believe me, that will be just the beginning of your problems." Robert Sterling swallowed hard. The financial impact of losing Ethel Corp's business alone would be catastrophic. The PR nightmare of a prominent black CEO publicly severing ties with his airline over racial discrimination against his son would be an unmitigated disaster, potentially leading to widespread boycotts and a precipitous drop in stock value. William Dixon wasn't just making threats, he was stating facts. "Hold the flight." Robert repeated, his mind reeling. Stopping a plane once it had pushed back from the gate was a complex logistical nightmare, requiring coordination with air traffic control and incurring massive delays and costs. William, that's an enormous undertaking. It will affect hundreds of passengers. Then let it affect them, William roared, finally unleashing a fraction of his pent-up rage. Let them understand the cost of their airline's casual prejudice. You have exactly 5 minutes, Robert. If I don't get a call confirming Jamal is on that plane, and that gate agent is off duty, then you will be looking for a new job by the end of the week, and your airline will be looking for a new name, because I will personally ensure it never recovers from this. He slammed the phone down, not waiting for a response. He leaned against his desk, breathing heavily, his mind already formulating the next steps. This wasn't just about Jamal anymore. This was about a systemic issue, a deep-seated bias that festered in corners of society, even in seemingly professional environments. He wouldn't let it stand. Not when it touched his son. He pulled out his phone again, dialing Jamal's number. "Jamal," he said, his voice softer now, but still firm. "Don't worry, son. They're going to hold the plane for you. Someone from the airline will be with you shortly. Just wait." Jamal, still huddled on the plastic bench, could barely believe his ears. "Hold the plane." "Dad, are you serious? It already left the gate?" "I'm always serious, Jamal," William said, a grim satisfaction in his tone. "Just wait. And remember, you have every right to be there. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." Meanwhile, back in his office, Robert Sterling was in a full-blown panic. He barked orders into his phone, his face pale. "Hold AC-107. I repeat, hold flight AC-107. Get me ground control. Get me the pilot. Get me the manager for Terminal 3. This is a code red find gate agent, Brenda, and relieve her of duty immediately. I want her ID badge confiscated now." The ripple effect had begun. A simple act of gate agent overreach, possibly fueled by unconscious bias, was about to ground an entire flight, spark a corporate crisis, and expose the ugly underbelly of an industry often lauded for its efficiency and customer service. The meticulously planned journey of AC-107 was about to become a very public spectacle, all because of a glare and a dismissive word. The pilot of American Continental Flight AC-107, Captain Gregory Thorne, was a man of routine. 27 years in the air, thousands of hours logged, and a stickler for punctuality. He had just received clearance from the tower for pushback, the ground crew already disconnecting the tug when his radio crackled with an urgent, unprecedented command. AC-107, AC-107, this is O'Hare Tower. Hold position. I repeat, hold position. Do not proceed to taxiway. Airline Operations has an urgent message for you. Captain Thorne frowned, exchanging a bewildered glance with his first officer, Rebecca Shaw. Hold position. What in the world? He grabbed his microphone. Tower AC-107 copies. Holding position. What's the nature of the delay? Stand by AC-107, came the terse reply. A moment later, a different voice, agitated and unfamiliar, cut in. Captain Thorne, this is Robert Sterling. I need you to power down the engines and prepare for a reboarding procedure. There's a critical passenger who was erroneously denied boarding. This is non-negotiable. Captain Thorne's jaw dropped. Robert Sterling himself. Ordering a power down and reboarding for a passenger after pushback. This was unheard of. The financial and logistical implications were staggering. Mr. Sterling, with all due respect, this is highly unusual. We have 280 passengers on board. We've already pushed back. A reboarding will cause significant delays and disruption. I understand the disruption, Captain. Sterling's voice was sharp, cutting through the static. But this is an order from the very top. The passenger is Jamal Dixon. He must be on this flight. Gate agent error. Power down the engines, Captain. Now. The tone left no room for argument. Captain Thorne sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Understood, Mr. Sterling. Powering down. Inform ground crew to reconnect. He turned to Rebecca. Well, that's a first. Critical passenger. Must be someone incredibly important. Little did he know he was vastly understating the situation. Back in the terminal, Jamal saw it. The massive Airbus A330, his plane which had begun to inch away from the gate, suddenly halted. Then, to his utter astonishment, the ground crew who had been waving their final goodbyes scurried back, reconnecting the tug to the nose wheel. A few minutes later, the jet bridge began to extend again slowly, deliberately, towards the plane's door. Jamal stared, utterly bewildered. Was this really happening? Was his dad so powerful he could literally stop a plane? Just then, a harried-looking man in an American Continental Airlines uniform, his tie slightly askew, practically sprinted towards him, holding a tablet. He was accompanied by another airline employee, a woman who looked equally distressed. "Jamal Dixon!" The man gasped, clearly out of breath. "Sir, are you Jamal Dixon?" Jamal, still sitting on the bench, nodded slowly. "Yes, that's me." "Oh, thank heavens," the man exclaimed, relief flooding his face. "I'm Thomas, Terminal Operations Manager. This is Angela, one of our customer service representatives. Mr. Dixon, we are so incredibly sorry for the misunderstanding. There's been a terrible error. Your ticket is absolutely valid. We've confirmed everything. The plane has been held for you." Angela offered a weak, apologetic smile. "We'll escort you directly onto the flight, Mr. Dixon." Jamal stood up, a mix of relief and lingering anger warring within him. "What about Brenda?" "The gate agent. She told me my name didn't match." Thomas's face darkened. "Brenda has been removed from her post, Mr. Dixon, effective immediately. There will be a full investigation into her conduct. Please follow us. The captain is waiting." As they hurried towards the now re-extended jet bridge, Jamal couldn't help but glance back at gate B23. Brenda was no longer there. In her place, a younger, much more flustered gate agent was attempting to deal with a growing throng of disgruntled passengers, all demanding answers about the unprecedented delay. Walking down the jet bridge, Jamal felt the weight of every passenger's eyes on him as he stepped into the first-class cabin. The flight attendant, a woman with a practiced smile that now seemed strained, greeted him. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Dixon. We're so glad you could join us." She ushered him to his seat, 2A, right by the window. He settled in the leather seat, feeling both familiar and alien after the ordeal. He looked out the window past the ground crew bustling around and saw the airport terminal. He thought of Brenda and the cold, dismissive look in her eyes. The humiliation still stung, but now it was tempered by a fierce sense of vindication. His father had delivered. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Captain Thorne made a public address. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We apologize for this unexpected and significant delay. There was a critical administrative error regarding one of our passengers, which necessitated a temporary hold. We've rectified the situation and we're now preparing for pushback once more. We anticipate an additional delay of approximately 45 minutes to an hour. We thank you for your patience and understanding." A collective groan swept through the cabin. Angry whispers erupted. A critical administrative error. Holding a plane for an hour. What kind of mistake warrants this? Passengers checked their watches, worried about connecting flights, business meetings, and precious vacation time. The mood on board was far from understanding. As the plane finally pushed back again, this time for good, Jamal pulled out his phone. He texted his dad. "I'm on the plane. Thanks, Dad. You're the best." William Dixon received the text in his office, a small, grim smile touching his lips. He knew the battle wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The internal investigation Robert Sterling had promised wouldn't be enough. The injustice Jamal had experienced, the casual prejudice that had been on display, required a far more public and comprehensive reckoning. William Dixon had the resources, the influence, and now the motivation to ensure that American Continental Airlines would not easily forget this day. He reached for his personal legal team's number. The fallout was already spreading. News of the unprecedented flight grounding, initially anecdotal whispers in the O'Hare terminal, began to leak onto social media. Passengers frustrated by the unexplained delay took to Twitter and Facebook complaining about American Continental's incompetence and bizarre decision to hold a flight after pushback. No one knew the real reason yet, but the airline's reputation was already taking a hit. Robert Sterling, still reeling from William Dixon's call, was now in damage control mode, barking orders to his PR team, trying to craft a narrative that would minimize the fallout. But he knew deep down that this was a crisis of monumental proportions. William Dixon was not a man to be trifled with, and he had just witnessed firsthand the terrifying extent of William's determination when his family was threatened. The gate agent, Brenda, was just the first domino to fall. The entire structure of American Continental Airlines suddenly felt alarmingly unstable. The digital age ensures that secrets rarely stay secret, and a story as dramatic as Flight AC-107's grounding was destined to explode. It began with scattered tweets from disgruntled passengers. Flight AC-107 delayed indefinitely at O'Hare after pushback. What is American Continental doing? Stuck on AC-107, captain announced administrative error caused delay. Total chaos. Then one passenger, a sharp-eyed reporter for a local Chicago news outlet, recognized the gravity of the situation. He discreetly observed the frantic activity around Gate B-23, the harried managers, and the swift disappearance of the original gate agent. He started digging. Within hours of Jamal's flight finally departing, the initial reports began to surface. Source: American Continental Flight AC-107 held on tarmac for critical passenger after initial boarding refusal. The critical passenger detail quickly piqued journalistic interest. Who was so important that an entire commercial flight already pushing back would be stopped for them. It didn't take long for the connections to be made. William Dixon, CEO of Ethel Corp., was a public figure. His son Jamal was easily identifiable through social media and past public appearances with his father. The narrative quickly shifted from airline incompetence to something far more insidious. The first major article breaking on a prominent online news platform was titled, "Tech Mogul William Dixon's Son Denied Boarding on American Continental Flight Prompting Unprecedented Grounding." It detailed the events at Gate B-23, quoting anonymous airline sources who spoke of a disgruntled gate agent and suspicious booking claims. The article subtly highlighted the fact that Jamal was a black teenager traveling alone on a first-class ticket. The internet, as it always does, erupted. American Continental is racist trash, disgusting. They held a plane for a kid, good for William Dixon. This is what happens when unconscious bias meets corporate power. Brenda needs to be fired and blacklisted from the industry. Imagine being a CEO and having to deal with this just because your kid is black. William Dixon's team, anticipating the inevitable media frenzy, had already prepared. His PR firm, a powerhouse in crisis management, issued a concise, carefully worded statement. Mr. William Dixon confirms that his son Jamal Dixon was indeed refused boarding on American Continental Flight AC-107, despite having a valid first-class ticket and proper identification. Mr. Dixon intervened to ensure his son's rightful boarding. While Mr. Dixon appreciates the swift action taken to rectify the immediate situation, He views this incident as a deeply troubling example of systemic issues within the airline industry. He expects a thorough and transparent investigation into the actions of the gate agent involved and the broader policies that allowed such an incident to occur. Mr. Dixon believes that all passengers, regardless of their background, deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. The statement was masterful. It confirmed the facts, thanked the airline for the immediate fix, but pivoted sharply to the systemic problem, framing the incident not as an isolated mistake, but as a symptom of a larger illness. It put American Continental firmly on the defensive. Robert Sterling was in an absolute nightmare. His phone hadn't stopped ringing for hours. Shareholders, board members, industry regulators, all demanding answers. His carefully cultivated image as a progressive, customer-focused CEO was crumbling. He called an emergency press conference, his face pale and drawn. He stood before a phalanx of cameras, sweat beading on his forehead. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice strained, "I am here today to address the deeply regrettable incident that occurred with Flight AC-107 at O'Hare International Airport." He explained with carefully chosen words that a gate agent identified only as Brenda had indeed erroneously denied boarding to Mr. Jamal Dixon. This was a grave lapse in judgment and a clear violation of our company's policies on customer service and non-discrimination, Sterling stated, trying to project an image of firm resolve. Ms. Brenda has been relieved of her duties, and a full internal investigation is underway. We are reaching out to Mr. Dixon and his family to extend our sincerest apologies and to offer whatever redress we can provide. A reporter immediately shot back. "Mr. Sterling, many are speculating this was a racially motivated incident. Can you confirm or deny that American Continental has a problem with racial profiling?" Sterling's face tightened. "We absolutely deny any systemic racial profiling. American Continental Airlines has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind. This was, we believe, an isolated incident of an employee failing to adhere to our strict protocols." Another reporter pressed, "An isolated incident that required the CEO of Ethel Corp to personally intervene and demand a flight be held. That seems like an extraordinary measure for an isolated incident, Mr. Sterling." Sterling floundered, unable to provide a convincing answer. The truth was, William Dixon's intervention had completely exposed the airline's vulnerabilities and forced a level of accountability they rarely faced. The press conference did little to quell the outrage. If anything, it fueled it. The public wasn't buying the isolated incident narrative. They saw a powerful black father forced to use his considerable influence to protect his son from blatant disrespect, possibly rooted in prejudice. This resonated deeply with many who had experienced similar, if less dramatic, encounters. Meanwhile, Brenda, the gate agent, found herself at the center of a different kind of storm. Her name, initially protected by the airline, had been leaked online by furious internet sleuths. Her social media profiles, once private, were now public, revealing a history of controversial posts, some subtly hinting at xenophobic and classist views. Screenshots of her past comments dismissing entitled youth and complaining about people who don't belong spread like wildfire. The isolated incident argument from American Continental began to look increasingly hollow. Brenda, who had been confident in her dismissal of Jamal, was now facing not just unemployment, but a public shaming of epic proportions. Her personal life was dissected, her past laid bare. The consequences of her snap judgment, fueled by whatever biases she held, were now crashing down on her with relentless force. William Dixon watched the unfolding drama with a grim satisfaction. He wasn't seeking revenge, not exactly. He was seeking justice and a broader reckoning. He knew that the personal humiliation of Brenda, while a consequence of her actions, was secondary to the larger message that needed to be sent, that prejudice in any form would not be tolerated, especially when it affected his son. The saga of Flight AC-107 became a national conversation dominating news cycles and trending topics. It highlighted not just the potential for individual prejudice, but also the power dynamics at play in modern society, where influence and wealth could sometimes force a confrontation with systemic issues that otherwise might go unnoticed or unaddressed. American Continental Airlines was now in the fight of its corporate life. Its reputation tarnished its stock price, beginning to reflect the growing public disapproval. And William Dixon was just getting started. The initial media storm was only the beginning. William Dixon, a man who never did anything by halves, wasn't content with just a public apology and a dismissed gate agent. He saw this as an opportunity, a crucial leverage point to force meaningful change. He assembled an elite legal team not just to sue American Continental for damages, but to demand a comprehensive overhaul of their diversity and inclusion policies. The lawsuit filed by Jamal Dixon by and through his guardian ad litem William Dixon, American Continental Airlines, and Jane Doe Brenda sought not only significant financial compensation for emotional distress and punitive damages, but also injunctive relief. This meant they demanded the court order American Continental to implement specific, measurable changes, including mandatory anti-bias training for all employees, regular audits of boarding procedures, and the establishment of an independent ombudsman for passenger discrimination complaints. Robert Sterling, already under immense pressure, bristled at the injunctive relief demands. "This is an overreach, William. You want to dictate how we run our airline," he fumed in a tense phone call with Dixon. "I want to ensure no other child or adult has to endure what my son went through." "Robert," William replied, his voice calm, but with an unyielding steel. "Your isolated incident has exposed a crack in your corporate culture. Either you fix it voluntarily, or the courts will force you to." The lawsuit drew even more media attention. Legal experts weighed in discussing the potential precedent such a case could set. Civil rights organizations lauded William Dixon's stance, offering their support and amplifying the call for systemic change. The pressure on American Continental intensified, not just from the public, but from within. Major corporate clients began to quietly inquire about the airline's diversity initiatives. Institutional investors, increasingly conscious of ESG, environmental, social, and governance factors, raised concerns about the reputational damage and potential financial liabilities. The board of directors at American Continental, sensing a growing crisis that could jeopardize their own positions, began to put immense pressure on Robert Sterling. They demanded a rapid and decisive response. Under duress, Sterling was forced to make concessions. He announced a series of sweeping changes. Mandatory anti-bias training. A comprehensive program developed by independent experts was implemented for every American Continental employee, from baggage handlers to pilots, with a particular focus on gate agents and customer service personnel. 2. Revised boarding protocols. New stricter guidelines were put in place, emphasizing objective verification of documents and explicitly prohibiting subjective judgments about a passenger's appearance or perceived status. 3. Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. A high-level task force was formed with external advisors to review all aspects of the airline's operations for potential biases and to recommend further improvements. 4. Community outreach programs. The airline announced new initiatives to partner with organizations promoting diversity in aviation and supporting underserved communities. These were significant steps, but William Dixon's legal team pressed on. They wanted more than promises. They wanted legally binding agreements and independent oversight. The negotiations were brutal, stretching on for months. Meanwhile, Brenda, the former gate agent, was grappling with her new reality. Unemployed, vilified online, and facing the possibility of being named in a high-profile lawsuit, her life had completely unraveled. She tried to find work, but her name was now synonymous with the American Continental Airlines scandal. Every application was met with polite refusals or, more often, silence. Her carefully constructed life, built on decades of diligent work, was gone. She lived in fear, her once unshakable confidence replaced by anxiety and a growing sense of despair. She tried to argue that she was just doing her job, that Jamal looked older, or that she was just being careful, but her earlier dismissive behavior, captured on grainy airport CCTV and recounted by witnesses, undermined her every defense. The legal battle finally culminated in an out-of-court settlement, a confidential sum paid to Jamal Dixon and his family rumored to be in the tens of millions of dollars. More importantly, American Continental Airlines formally agreed to all of William Dixon's demands for injunctive relief, enshrining them in a legally binding consent decree. This meant the airline would be subject to ongoing independent monitoring to ensure compliance with its new anti-discrimination and diversity policies for a period of 5 years. The settlement was a landmark victory. William Dixon had not just secured justice for his son, but he had leveraged the incident to force a major corporation to confront its internal failings and commit to fundamental change. The stock price of American Continental, which had plummeted during the crisis, slowly began to stabilize as investors cautiously welcomed the new leadership and commitment to change. However, the cost was not just financial. The scandal had exposed deep divisions within American Continental's corporate culture. Robert Sterling, though he had spearheaded the recovery efforts, had been severely weakened. His image was tarnished, his authority diminished. The board, while appreciating his efforts to salvage the situation, began to quietly search for his replacement. They needed a fresh start, a new face to lead the airline into a post-scandal era. The company was being restructured from its hiring practices to its customer service philosophy, and the old guard, including its long-standing CEO, was being phased out. The karma was just beginning to hit, not only for the gate agent, but for the entire corporate entity. For Jamal, the ordeal was a turning point. The initial humiliation had been painful, but the subsequent vindication and his father's fierce defense had left him with a profound understanding of justice and advocacy. He spent his summer in Portland as planned, but the memory of the airport incident lingered. He began to talk more openly with his father about issues of racial bias and systemic inequality. William, for his part, made sure Jamal understood that his experience, while deeply unfair, was not an indictment of him personally, but rather of a society still grappling with its prejudices. The multi-million-dollar settlement, after taxes and legal fees, was put into a trust fund for Jamal's future education and endeavors. William insisted that Jamal use a portion of it to fund a scholarship program for underprivileged students interested in aviation or technology, a way to turn a negative experience into a positive legacy. Jamal, now more mature and thoughtful, embraced the idea, naming it the Dixon Pathways Scholarship. Brenda's life continued its downward spiral. The public shaming had destroyed her reputation, and the financial pressures mounted. Unable to find comparable work, she eventually had to sell her house and move in with a distant relative, a shadow of her former self. The confident, dismissive gate agent had been replaced by a withdrawn, embittered woman haunted by the consequences of her actions. She often lamented to anyone who would listen that she was just doing her job, and that she had been made a scapegoat by the airline, never fully acknowledging the racial undertones of her actions or the trauma she had inflicted on a teenage boy. Her inability to self-reflect meant she remained trapped in her own cycle of resentment. Within American Continental Airlines, the changes were palpable. The mandatory anti-bias training, initially met with resistance by some long-term employees, slowly began to shift the corporate culture. New hiring practices brought in a more diverse workforce, and the independent oversight from William Dixon's legal team ensured compliance. Passenger complaints regarding discrimination significantly decreased. The airline, under a new CEO, a dynamic woman named Eleanor Vance, began a painstaking process of rebuilding its image and regaining public trust. Eleanor was a champion of diversity and inclusion, brought in specifically to lead this transformation. She frequently cited the Jamal Dixon incident as a stark reminder of the work that still needed to be done. William Dixon, however, wasn't finished. The success of the lawsuit and the ensuing corporate changes at American Continental galvanized him. He established the Dixon Family Foundation, dedicating substantial personal resources to combating racial injustice and promoting equitable opportunities. He became a vocal advocate for diversity in corporate America, frequently speaking at conferences and lending his immense influence to various civil rights initiatives. He worked with other prominent Black leaders to push for legislation that would hold corporations more accountable for discriminatory practices. Years passed. Jamal went to college excelling in computer science and eventually joining a burgeoning tech startup. The Dixon Pathways Scholarship flourished, sending dozens of deserving students to college. Jamal himself became involved mentoring scholarship recipients and sharing his story not as a victim, but as someone who had experienced injustice and helped to spark change. One day, while volunteering at a local community center, Jamal recognized a familiar face among the attendees at a job fair. It was Brenda. Her hair was grayer, her frame thinner, and her eyes held a weariness he hadn't seen before. She didn't seem to recognize him. He felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name. Not pity, not forgiveness, but a complex mix of the two, intertwined with the lingering ghost of that day at the gate. He didn't approach her. He realized that her karma had played out a slow, grinding consequence of her choices. The incident with Flight AC-107 became a case study in business schools and a cautionary tale in airline industry ethics. It served as a stark reminder that even seemingly minor acts of prejudice could have far-reaching and devastating consequences, not just for individuals, but for entire organizations. William Dixon's unwavering fight for his son had not only transformed an airline, but had also solidified his legacy as a leader who stood for justice, proving that true power lay not just in wealth or influence, but in the courage to challenge injustice, no matter the cost. The years that followed the American Continental Airlines incident solidified William Dixon's reputation far beyond the tech world. He wasn't just a CEO. He was a corporate titan who had weaponized his influence for social justice. His face, once primarily associated with quarterly earnings reports and technological innovations, now frequently appeared on news channels discussing systemic bias, corporate accountability, and the ongoing fight for equity. The Dixon Family Foundation became a formidable force funding research into implicit bias, supporting legal challenges against discriminatory practices, and investing in educational programs designed to empower marginalized youth. Jamal, now in his late 20s, had grown into a man who carried his father's quiet strength, but possessed his own unique vision. He built his tech startup, Ether Connect, into a successful enterprise focused on bridging digital divides in underserved communities. He understood intrinsically that access and opportunity were not evenly distributed, a lesson he learned acutely at Gate B23. The Dixon Pathways Scholarship, which he now co-managed with his father, had expanded its reach, becoming a beacon of hope for hundreds of students from diverse backgrounds, dreaming of careers in aviation engineering and technology. Many of these students, inspired by Jamal's own story, saw him as a living testament to resilience and the power of a single voice. One evening, at a black tie gala honoring the Dixon Family Foundation, Jamal stood beside his father as William accepted a Lifetime Achievement Award for his philanthropic work. The presenter, a renowned civil rights activist, recounted the American Continental Airlines story, highlighting how a father's love had ignited a movement. William Dixon, the activist declared, didn't just get his son on a flight. He grounded an entire corporate culture, forced a reckoning, and showed us all that justice, when pursued with unwavering resolve, can transform institutions. He turned personal pain into public purpose, ensuring that the next generation, like his son Jamal, can soar without the invisible chains of prejudice holding them back. As the applause thundered, Jamal looked at his father, a profound sense of admiration and gratitude swelling within him. They had come a long way from that cold airport bench. Brenda, meanwhile, remained a cautionary tale. Her life never truly recovered. The internet, unforgiving, and with a long memory, ensured that any attempt to re-enter the professional world was met with the specter of the American Continental incident. She drifted between low-wage temporary jobs, her once sharp demeanor dulled by years of struggle and the bitter taste of public condemnation. She never found peace, or truly understood the magnitude of her actions, remaining convinced she was an innocent victim of circumstances. Her story served as a stark personal example of the hard karma that William Dixon had envisioned, a life fundamentally altered by a moment of casual prejudice. American Continental Airlines, under Eleanor Vance's leadership, slowly regained its footing. The mandatory training, the new policies, and a genuine commitment to diversity transformed its corporate image. It became a leader in inclusive hiring practices and customer service, a surprising phoenix rising from the ashes of a public relations disaster. The incident, once a stain, became a historical marker, a never-again moment that reshaped the company's core values. Their stock soared, reaching new heights driven not just by profits, but by a newly burnished reputation for ethical conduct and social responsibility. Years later, Jamal found himself at O'Hare again, preparing for a business trip. He walked past Gate B23, a faint echo of that day lingering in the air. This time, the gate agent, a young woman named Clara, greeted him with a warm smile. She scanned his boarding pass efficiently, her eyes meeting his with genuine professionalism. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Dixon," she said. There was no hesitation, no suspicion, just courtesy. As he walked down the jet bridge, Jamal realized the true extent of his father's victory. It wasn't just about the lawsuit or the money or the changed policies. It was about the shift in human interaction, the quiet dignity that now permeated the airport experience for people like him. It was a testament to the enduring power of a father's love, the ripple effect of one act of injustice, and the relentless pursuit of a more equitable world. The flight attendant, a different face, greeted him with the same polite professionalism. Jamal took his seat 2A by the window and looked out at the vast expanse of the tarmac, ready for his journey. The past lingered a scar, but the future for him and for countless others now looked infinitely brighter. The story of Jamal Dixon and American Continental Airlines is a stark reminder that the fight for justice is often a personal one, but its impact can be profoundly public. What began as a moment of casual prejudice at a gate transformed into a national dialogue on systemic bias, corporate accountability, and the enduring power of a father's love. William Dixon didn't just get his son on a plane. He grounded an entire airline's outdated practices and forced it to confront its internal failings, creating a legacy that continues to empower and uplift. This story isn't just about one incident. It's about the ripple effect of injustice and the transformative power of those who refuse to let it stand. If this story resonated with you, if it sparked a conversation about fairness and equity, then please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this powerful message, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that illuminate the human experience. Let's keep these crucial conversations alive.